Okay, guys. So, on to this particular lecture, what we are going to understand is that we are going to understand what is a functional interface and why it is even required. So, what is a functional interface? So, as per definition, a functional interface and an interface that contains single abstract method. If there are if there are two abstract methods, then that interface cannot be termed as a functional interface, right? Uh, Okay, let me ask you guys a particular question. Do you guys even know what an interface is all about? Okay, no worries. If you do not know, I'll just quickly recap everything in just 1 minute. So, what is an interface? An interface can contain or contains methods which are by default public abstract, right? And interface in an interface the methods do not have a body. So there is a huge difference between an abstract class and an interface. An abstract class can contain abstract methods and non-abstract methods, whereas an interface can contain only abstract methods which are by default public abstract, right? And they do not have a body. Okay, and why this concept of functional interface came and why it is needed, let's quickly discuss. Functional interface, whenever you hear this particular term or somebody asks you functional interface, 2 points should immediately you should remember. Firstly, it enables us to make use of lambda expressions, that it also helps to make use of functional programming. Functional programming, I have given you a basic idea. That was not the pure functional programming, but basic idea I've given you in the first and the second lecture, right? Or you can say a couple of minutes back, right? And functional interface is an interface that contains single abstract method. So why I am saying that it will be containing only single abstract method? So there is an annotation named as functional interface. Just try to get into my skin. I'll just quickly tell you. So let's say I've created this particular package, and allow me to create a particular interface. The name of the interface that I'm taking is like time machine. Okay, by time machine there is a logic behind that, that you guys are able to understand. If I can also take very technical example of getting web page title, these kind of things, you will be irritated at some point of time. I'm taking a very simple daily life example. This is an interface named as time machine. So let's say, take an example, there was a person who was building a time machine. Okay, the name of that person was, let's say, Rahul, and at the age of 45 Rahul died. Why? Because he implemented something, a logic, with the help of which he was able to go to the future. He was able to go to the future, right? He was able to do that, and some agencies, or secret agencies, simply killed him. Why I'm telling you this story? Just for the sake of remembering how you can remember it. So we created a interface named as time machine, you know and this person was working onto that. This person defined a method in Java that you would be able to go to the future. You would be able to go to the future, but while he was working, he was being killed, so it remained unimplemented. Since it was remained unimplemented, which means that somebody else is going to implement what he left behind. Or let's say, if it was partially implemented, or it was totally unimplemented, or he died due to certain circumstances, so it needs to be implemented. So that's what the whole intent of interfaces are all about, right? At this point of time, if you are totally a learner, you are seeing my lecture for the very first time, you have not gone through the previous, just think that this is what it could be, right? So this is an interface. It contains, the name of the interface is time machine, and there are these methods defined over there. There can be multiple methods defined over there. Go to the future, and they can also be go to the past as well, right? So they can be n number of abstract methods defined over here. And why they're abstract? Because by default compiler will put these two keywords. Sorry, let me make it a little bit bigger. By default compiler will add these two methods, or sorry, these two keywords for all these methods, because in an interface you can only have abstract methods. Okay, you cannot have methods which is of non-abstract type. For abstract and non-abstract, why abstract class is required, please visit my lectures onto my Java playlist. You will find somewhere. I'm not linking it over here because we really do not have that level of time to link everything click over here. Please go to the Java playlist, guys. I'm really sorry, I do not have that much of bandwidth available. You can find what abstract classes are all about, right? So in an interface can contain a number of an interface. Again, I'm just reiterating, even if you are listening, whether you are traveling, just listen. An interface can contain a number of abstract methods. So it will contain only methods of type abstracts. Latest in the Java 8, you can have a number of static and default. We'll discuss, but in interface, this is what it goes about, right? If I declare it as a functional interface, there is an annotation, functional functional interface. What is a functional interface? If I just import it, allow me to import it, guys. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. So, guys, it is giving me an error. If I define this interface as a functional interface, it is erroring me out. Why it is erroring me out? Because over here what we have written, functional interface is an interface that contains single abstract method. So there are two double abstract methods. This is also a by default public abstract, this is also by default public abstract. So if I remove one of the method over here, so this error will be gone. I hope you guys have seen this, right? So a functional interface, an interface that contains a single abstract method, and it enables us to make use of lambda expression and functional programming. How? I'm just going to discuss onto this particular very lecture, right? And at the end of the lecture you'll be able to understand why the concept of lambda came, or why, right? Okay, so before moving to step 2, first let's get back to step 1. Again, I'm reiterating, it is an interface that contains a single abstract method. If there are two abstract methods, it will start giving me an error. And why it is needed? It is needed so that compiler can give error. And why it is needed, why functional interface is needed, why this annotation is even required. This annotation is required so that if we try to violate the rules of functional interface, which says that it can have only one single abstract method, if we are violating it, compiler should give error. So why it is needed? The very first reason was that, right? Again, why it is needed? The second reason can be it enables us to make use of lambda expressions or functional programming, right? So we can simply tell the interviewer if this kind of question is asked at the very basic level. Okay, so what are kind of interfaces that we had or we have at this point of time? We have Runnable is an interface, Callable is an interface, Supplier, consumer, function, predicates, all these are interfaces and they need to be implemented, right? Or their functions are required to be implemented by someone else at some point of time. So we are going to discuss especially these four have been introduced in Java 1.8. So we'll be discussing in a very detail, in a very depth manner. This lecture is going to be a lengthier one, or this series you can say is going to be a lengthier, but you would be able to understand the concept. You would not be required to go to any coaching institute, or you would not be required to run behind a particular teacher, or you would not be required to be demoralized by your peers in an organization or your seniors in an organization. Just watch my lectures, everything is going to be fine. Everything you will be able to understand with lambda stream and blah blah blah, whatever it comes. Deliberately, I don't know why they have made these concepts so much of fancy that people are their hands are shaking when they are making use of this lambda kind of stuff. It's very easy, guys, very very easy. Okay, so coming back to this particular thing, what is a functional interface? A functional interface is an interface that contains only single abstract method, and if you apply this annotation, then you won't be able to add or violate the rule of this annotation which states that there can be only one single abstract method. Okay. And in functional interface, you can contain n number of default methods and static methods. So if I declare some static methods over here, or I declare some default methods over here, n number it can contain, right? And it also contains that add functional interface annotation so that compiler can throw immediately, right? As I do this, compiler throws error immediately, right? Then multiple non-overriding abstract methods found. So if you delete it, this is the rule, just learn it. Okay. Now the core concept comes over here. Why this sort of drama is even required? Why to do a lot of hard work? Why to learn Java 1.8? Why to do this? Because our brain is so much of lazy that our brain does not wants to learn anything new. Okay, so why? In order to understand the why, you have to understand some previous history, right? Because it may happen that even going through these step 1 and step 2, you may think that but still I do not know, still it's not clear to me why functional interface introduced, you know or why in future we are going to make use of lambda. Because for lambda, functional interfaces are required. In order to make the code smaller, lambda is required, and in order to make it smaller, interface this functional interface concept was introduced. Or you can say, if you are not getting it technically, just understand into this particular term. Nobody's gonna ask you at this deep level. Okay, so first understand the history. What was the problem? Then we'll come to the solution of lambda. Okay, so the problem was that, let's say when Rahul was alive and Rahul was working onto this time machine concept, he was also able to go to the future, but since he was getting his success, some people got jealous. They simply killed him, and this method remained unimplemented. Nobody was able to implement it further, right? So onto my this particular package, let's say, what I'm going to again reiterate to this my lecture. In the previous class I discussed, again I'm going to discuss it over here. Allow me to create a particular class. Let's say in the name of the class, let's say one of the top notch companies, whatever you can think, let's say Google. I'm just taking example of Google, right? At this point of time, so just remove these irritating things, do this. Okay, we just discussed these things couple of minutes back. Again, let's reiterate everything. Okay, so Google is saying that since Rahul was renowned an Indian scientist in Java, he was not able to implement it. We are going to implement it, right? So the problem was that they cannot implement everything over here. They cannot implement it in this particular interface. Google has to create his own class, and onto this particular class, now Google can provide the implementation. Okay, so allow me to create the main method. So Google can only provide the implementation by creating its own class. There was no other way. Let's say, okay. So for in order to implement it, a new class was required. A new extra space in memory was required. You know, to implement only this particular method. So let's say it got over here. Allow me to create an object Google GG equals new Google. Okay, so you have to write, if Google is implementing unimplemented method defined by the Rahul, so that you can go to the future with the help of time machine, you have to write implements. Why? This concept has been explained in one of my previous lecture. If you are implementing an interface, you have to write implements I1, I2, I3. Multiple you can do, you can multiple implement multiple interfaces, right? Implements, let's say time machine. Okay, so we are implementing it. Once you write this particular piece of line, you click over here, you have to implement all the abstract methods, and so this is mandatory, right? Okay, so now let's say Google decided that we are going to implement the remaining method, right? So just allow me to do the implementation part. So let's say I am from the Google company, we are going to implement something which was unimplemented since that scientist was killed by someone being getting jealous. So allow me to print it. Implemented by Google, let's say Google implemented by Google. Now they can go to future. Let's say Google implemented this method and Google is able to go to the future, right? So how to make sure that this particular piece of implementation is running? Just simply call it over here gg dot go to the future, right? And now if I do control s and if I just run this particular file, just execute. This time I'm doing the actual execution. I'll do the actual execution of lambda expression as well. So implemented by Google, they can go to the future. I hope you guys are able to understand. Okay, so Google has had that ability to implement the unimplemented method of the particular interface by creating a new class. But the problem was that since you created this a new class, it is going to conquer some memory space, uh, right? So this was the one way if you want to implement some method of an interface. The another way, there was another way in order to do this. First, first way is that you create a new class and implement them, provide the method implementation, and then make use of it. I just showed it this method over here so that you are confident that this code is running. Okay. Now there comes another company. That company says that we also do have capability to go to the future, and the name of the company is, let's say, Facebook, right? This company came. This company says that we will also implement something. Okay, very good, very fine, right? So allow me to create the main method over here. Now Facebook is going to implement something. Okay, so the way they would be implementing is that they won't be creating another class. They've optimized their code a little bit. So they are saying that we won't be creating a class over here, but they will implement in their own class, in the Facebook class. Some sort of management they might be able to do that, memory management, right? I even do not know. So let's say this is a way of doing this, right? Now you have to call this particular method over here, go to the future. And over here, once we declare this kind of stuff, we are going to provide the implementation over here. So public void go to the future, and now we are going to provide some sort of implementation over here, right? Dot println. Once we do that, now we write that this has been implemented by Facebook, right? I hope you guys are clear. So this much amount of code is required, but they have what they have done. What the best part they have done over here is that instead of creating a new class like the Google did, Facebook had their own class and they implemented it with the help of an anonymous function or an anonymous class. What this anonymous class is all about, we'll be discussing later on, because again this concept is required in one of my upcoming lectures. I'll quickly tell you guys, but the scope of this lecture is that how to implement the unimplemented method of an interface. The first way, you have to create a particular class and then provide the implementation. The second problem was that if you do not want to create it, if you want to create it within that own single class, you have to write so much line of code over here, right? And after that, once this line of code is written, t dot go to the future, this code is also required over here. Okay, So can we run it? Will this code gonna run? I'm just going to run this particular file. Let's see what happens. It is saying that it is implemented by the Facebook. Google has also implemented it. I'm going to run this. This class will say that implemented by Google, they can go to future, right? So this was an interface, guys. Nobody is going to tell you in so much of in great depth or detail. Please pay a very careful attention. This was a functional interface because it was containing only single abstract method. Rahul was the person who was creating this method in order to go to the future. He was an Indian Java kind of scientist, but some people killed him because they did not like him. So after few years later, 10, 15, 20 years later, the tech giants in current or in the current scenario said that we have the capability, we are going to implement. But the problem was that Google had to create its own different class. It's going to consume some memory, and they have to. And Facebook, when started implementing, they also implemented, right? But they had to write so much line of code over here again, right? But what happened? What will happen in the case of Lambda? Please try to understand now. If we implement it now with the help of lambda, let's say lambda. Actually it is lambda, but I'm just taking it over here as lambda. I am going to create public static void main method over here, increase the font size, and now I am going to provide a single line implementation. So what this Facebook has done, provided, let's say, I won't be taking this, I won't be taking this, I won't be taking this, like access specifier, modifier, or return type, or the method name with a single line. I'll be removing this as well. There's no return statement over here. So I am going to provide a lambda expression over here. So what's the way? You have to write the name of interface over here. Let's This is the interface, a reference object equals to sign, parenthesis, hyphen, and this, right? And now you can provide the implementation. System dot out dot print ln this, and provide the implemented by lambda to go future in just one line of code. Will this code be running? Most of you guys would be having doubt. You have written, but can you show us? Yes, I'll quickly show you guys. We are taking a lot of pain so that you guys are able to understand. So the build is success. Okay, so this code got run successfully. Okay, so we have provided the implementation with the help of lambda over here. Okay, so if I just call it tm.test, sorry, tm dot not get, go to the future. Now if I run it, it's going to print something, right? So implemented by lambda to go to future in just one line of code. So now I hope you guys have got the clear cut idea why lambda expression is required. Functional interface is required so that we can make use of lambda, because without functional interface, lambda expressions do not make much sense. But why lambda? Why Java 8? Why these questions are asked in interviews? Because of this line. Okay, just one line and few words, one word, two word, three, four, 5 words. The entire implementation is done for going to the future, right? Google had to create a particular new class. One, two, three. If I do, there are some coders who do this kind of stuff. So one, two, three, four, 5 lines over here, 6, 7, 8. If I do this, 9, 10, 11, entire new class, 11 line of code over here. Same goes over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like 10 lines of code are being getting wasted, and with the help of lambda expression, in just one line of code, and that is it. right? So this is the power of lambda expression, and I have showed you with the help of this time machine example so that you're able to understand. Again, I'm reiterating, my just providing my closing comments, guys. This was an interface, this is a functional interface. The problem that was occurring previous was that although we were able to implement the unimplemented method by creating a new class or by using some anonymous class by printing it over here or providing the details for the, if it is required, only one time implementation is required, right? But with the help of lambda, you know, neither we have to make use of anonymous class, neither we have to make use of creating a new class, right? We do not need to make a new class, we do not have to make use of anonymous class. We can provide the implementation in just one single line by making use of these rules. If these rules are intact, very soon you'll be able to, it will get head stuck onto your head. With the help of these rules, we have created this particular lambda expression, and you will say how, where the rules have been implemented. So see, let's take example of a Google has implemented into this method, right? So we removed access modifier, return type, method name, single line of code. So this was also required, no parameter and no return type, right? So that is why everything was removed over here. This was the way that you can provide the implementation, right? And this simply refers that, that it is referring to a particular interface. I have seen people getting confused that you cannot create an object of an interface. This is point one, please note it down. You cannot create an object of an interface because in, what is the use of creating an object once, if you, of a class or an interface, if you cannot use the methods of that class of or an interface? Let's say in an interface the methods are totally unimplemented, so there would be no use of creating an object. But over here we are not creating an object, we are simply defining this object, right? There's a difference between defining an object and there's a difference between creating an object and making use of it. So if I again give demo, it will take me another half an hour. I'll cover, if I get required amount of comments, I'll just cover it some other topic which would be totally off grid, that would not be related to Java 1.8. But over here, guys, please remember, we are not creating an object of an interface, right? We are defining it over here. So this is what this lecture was all about. um, there were three steps involved: what is the functional interface, why needed, why it was needed, so that lambda expression can be used. Now you guys are able to understand why functional interface is needed, because if functional interface is there, kind of like this, we can do this, we can do wonders in one line. We would not be required to do hell lot of work like Google and Facebook. I hope I'm making sense. Okay, and it enables to make use of FI, which is functional programming. We'll discuss it later on. And it is an interface that contains single abstract method. Okay, so I hope you guys are able to understand now what is the use, where the history is coming from, what was the problem. Um I have explained it to the most detail that I could have gone through at this point of time. Even if you want some more details or in more depth, please comment me in the comment section, guys. I'll be happy to help you out. Right. So thank you for your time and patience. Thanks a lot. I'm signing off for the day. Thank you.